The afternoon sun filtered through the oak trees at Willowbrook Park, casting gentle shadows across the playground where children's laughter filled the warm spring air as Jessica Reynolds sat on a nearby bench watching her 7-year-old daughter Lily swing quietly back and forth, her long brown hair flowing behind her like silk ribbons. At 34, Jessica had built a successful consulting firm employing over 200 people and was known for her ability to solve complex problems and communicate with anyone, but the one person she could not reach was the most important one in her world. Lily had not spoken a single word since the traumatic car accident that claimed her father's life 18 months earlier, and though Jessica had tried everything — speech therapists, child psychologists, play therapy, even expensive specialists from other cities — the doctors assured her that there was nothing physically wrong with Lily's ability to speak. Only an emotional silence that acted as a barrier around pain too big for a child to process. Hoping that being around other children might encourage her to engage with the world again, Jessica brought Lily to the playground often, but Lily remained in her quiet bubble, participating in activities but never making a sound, communicating only through gentle nods and expressive eyes that seemed older than her years. As Jessica watched, a man approached the swing set with what appeared to be his daughter. He was in his early 30s, wearing a casual blue shirt and jeans, carrying an easy confidence that suggested he was comfortable in his own skin, while the little girl beside him, blonde-haired with an infectious smile, looked to be Lily's age. "Hi there," the man said warmly to Lily. "I'm Michael, and this is my daughter, Emma. Would you mind if Emma used the swing next to you?" Lily looked up with curious eyes, then glanced at Emma before nodding politely and continuing her silent swinging. Emma climbed onto the adjacent swing, pumping her legs enthusiastically. "I love swings," she announced cheerfully. "They make me feel like I'm flying. Do you like to feel like you're flying too?" For the first time in weeks, Jessica saw Lily's lips curve into a small but genuine smile, a fragile spark of joy brought out by Emma's boundless chatter and warmth that seemed to create a bubble of light around both girls. "Kevin, are you absolutely sure about this?" 100%, Kevin replied, opening the book to the exact page on mercury poisoning. "Look here, the symptoms match perfectly, and I have a theory about how the mercury is getting into his system." The doctor leaned in to examine the text, impressed by the accuracy of Kevin's knowledge, and asked, "How do you know all this?" Kevin explained, "I learned by reading, observing, absorbing everything I could. When you're invisible, people talk in front of you as if you don't exist, and I've learned more medicine in these 3 years than many residents do in years of college." Dr. Chun nodded slowly and asked what he needed her to do, and Kevin answered with intensity in his eyes that always unsettled adults. "I need access to Cross's complete medical records from the last 3 months, including visitors and personal items he uses regularly, and I need you to help me collect evidence without Dr. Peterson knowing." As they talked, Kevin explained his theory that someone was systematically poisoning Cross through personal products, having observed that the Billionaire used imported toothpaste, aftershave lotion, and headache medicine daily, any of which could have been laced with organic mercury to cause slow but lethal poisoning. Dr. Chun, watching him with growing admiration, whispered that if he was right, this was attempted murder. "Exactly," Kevin confirmed, "and that's why I need solid evidence before confronting Dr. Peterson again. Last time he humiliated me publicly, but next time I'll have proof even he can't ignore." At that moment, a nurse rushed down the hall announcing another emergency in Cross's room, and Kevin and Dr. Chun ran in to find controlled chaos as Cross seized, his skin grayish and vital signs dangerously unstable. 50 more milligrams of diazepam and increased the dosage of the iron chelator. Dr. Peterson barked, while Dr. Chun cautiously suggested other possibilities since the symptoms weren't responding, but he cut her off coldly. "I hope you haven't been influenced by that boy's fantasies. Medicine isn't democratic. Experience counts more than childish theories." Kevin, fists clenched with frustration outside the room, decided to act, and during the nursing shift change slipped into Cross's room, photographing every personal item and carefully sampling the slightly silver-toned toothpaste with a spatula, storing it in a borrowed container. "What are you doing?" an authoritative voice demanded, and Kevin turned to see Dr. Peterson with 2 security guards. "Collecting evidence," Kevin replied calmly, but Peterson scoffed and ordered security to remove him and call his mother, just as Dr. Chun appeared, urging Peterson to at least hear Kevin out since Cross was deteriorating fast. Peterson threatened Chun's career if she continued supporting this circus, but Kevin stepped forward with a container and said firmly, "In 12 hours, Cross will be dead if you continue this treatment. But if you test this sample for mercury, you'll find lethal concentrations." Peterson dismissed it as ridiculous, though Kevin detected hesitation and challenged, "Then do the test. If I'm wrong, I'll never question a medical diagnosis again. But if I'm right, if you're right, what?" Peterson asked mockingly, and Kevin met his eyes with unwavering confidence. "If I'm right, you'll have to explain how a 14-year-old boy saved a billionaire's life when 15 experts failed." Silence fell except for the monitor's beeps, until Peterson, torn between irritation and curiosity, finally said, "We'll do his little test, but when it comes back negative, I want him and his mother out of this hospital permanently." Kevin, smiling for the first time in hours, accepted with quiet certainty. "I accept the bet, Dr. Peterson, but I suggest you start preparing an explanation for the press about how this hospital almost lost the country's most famous billionaire because of medical pride." As Dr. Peterson left the room with the sample, clearly uncomfortable but committed to the test, Kevin whispered to Dr. Chun, "Now comes the interesting part, because when that test comes back positive for mercury, we're going to find out who's trying to kill Cross, and I already have my suspicions." Dr. Chun looked at him with growing admiration and asked how he had developed all this expertise. "When society makes you invisible, you learn to see things others don't," Kevin replied, watching through the window as Dr. Peterson argued animatedly with other doctors in the hallway. "And what I've seen over the past 3 years has prepared me for this very moment." The test would take 2 hours to complete. 2 hours Kevin intended to use to prepare the next phase of his plan, because proving that Cross was being poisoned was only the beginning. Finding out who was behind it and why would be the true test of his genius. As he watched Cross struggle against the effects of mercury, Kevin felt an iron determination harden in his chest, knowing that 15 renowned doctors had failed not from a lack of knowledge, but from a lack of humility to consider another perspective. 2 hours and 17 minutes later, Dr. Peterson returned with an expression Kevin would never forget. The test had come back positive for lethal levels of mercury, just as he had predicted. "Positive result for organic mercury poisoning," she announced bitterly. "Concentration of 2 for parts per million in the toothpaste." The silence was broken only by the steady beeps of Cross's monitors as 15 specialists stared at Kevin as though seeing a miracle. "Immediately begin treatment with dimercaprol, 50 milligrams per pound of body weight intramuscularly every 4 hours," Kevin instructed calmly. Dr. Peterson opened her mouth to protest but closed it, realizing that the boy had just saved a billionaire's life, where 15 experts had failed. Kevin wasn't finished. "Dr. Peterson, have you checked who has access to Mr. Cross's personal belongings?" he asked. "That's a job for the police," she replied defensively. "Actually, I've already identified the culprit," Kevin said, pulling out his phone. He explained that over 3 weeks he had observed all of Cross's visitors and discovered that only 3 people had regular access: head nurse Sandra Williams, personal assistant David Foster, and his ex-wife Rebecca Cross. But only one visited exactly 3 hours before each health crisis: Rebecca, who always brought gifts, including the imported organic toothpaste. As the team listened in shock, Rebecca herself entered the room carrying a bag of products, including toothpaste. Kevin confronted her, revealing that she was an industrial chemist with access to organic mercury, and that every crisis had occurred 6 hours after her visits. He showed photos documenting her pharmacy purchases and her entrance into the chemical lab. Rebecca tried to deny it, but Kevin revealed he had also recorded her secretly mixing the substance into the toothpaste. Her mask crumbled, and as security was called, Rebecca collapsed against the wall, realizing her perfect plan was ruined by a boy society ignored. Dr. Peterson, shaken, admitted, "Kevin, you didn't just save Cross's life. You solved a case that could have been the perfect crime." As police led Rebecca away and Cross began improving under proper treatment, Kevin stood quietly, proving that genius has no age, color, or social class. 6 months later, he walked the hospital corridors again, now wearing a white coat embroidered with his name, Kevin Beaumont, junior medical consultant, the youngest in the hospital's history at just 15, balancing part-time consulting while completing accelerated medical studies on a full scholarship. Peterson, who had once humiliated Kevin publicly, now greeted him respectfully in the hallways, his arrogance replaced by forced humility, because explaining how a 14-year-old boy saved a billionaire when 15 specialists had failed was hardly the kind of story that elevated a medical reputation. One morning, Peterson intercepted him, visibly uncomfortable, and said, "I wanted to thank you again for showing us what we had missed." Kevin smiled politely and replied, "Dr. Peterson, we all make mistakes. The difference is in learning from them." The Cross case had made national headlines. Boy genius saves billionaire and unravels conspiracy, dominating front pages for weeks. Universities offered Kevin full scholarships, television programs fought for interviews, and he became a symbol that genius has no color, age, or social class. William Cross, fully recovered, established a $100 million educational fund dedicated to invisible, young people like Kevin, brilliant children overlooked by systems that saw uniforms instead of minds. "That boy saved me when the best doctors in the country failed," Cross said in an interview. "If there's a Kevin out there being underestimated, I want to find him." Diane, no longer working as a cleaning lady, became the program coordinator and proudly told the media, "My son taught me that knowledge is not lost. It just waits for the right moment to shine." Meanwhile, Rebecca Cross was sentenced to 25 years in prison for attempted murder, and when asked in court how she felt about being discovered by a teenager, she bitterly replied, "I didn't even see he existed." The phrase went viral, symbolizing how society discards incredible talent through prejudice and invisibility. Kevin, however, remained humble, always emphasizing in interviews that his skill came from careful observation, not innate genius, and that anyone could develop it if given access to knowledge and opportunity. At just 15, Kevin now studied medicine at Harvard, yet often returned to the hospital where it all began, not as the invisible son of a cleaning lady, but as a respected consultant whose insights continued to save lives. Dr. Peterson never fully recovered from the humiliation. Though he kept his position, he had lost the moral authority he once commanded, with colleagues often reminding him of the day a teenage boy taught him medicine. Kevin's story proved that true genius does not need recognition to exist. It waits for the right moment to transform the world, and that those society trains to be invisible are often the very ones who see what everyone else misses. The best revenge against prejudice is not anger, but success beyond what the oppressors ever imagined. Kevin turned invisibility into a superpower, ignorance into opportunity, and proved that underestimating someone based on appearances can be the greatest mistake of all. If this story of resilience and justice inspired you, subscribe to the channel for more narratives that show how true justice happens when hidden talent finally gets its chance to shine.